Would be the first person to say that I love when you guys send me pictures. I love that. When I am noticing something in the picture that's creepier than what you've noticed in the picture, you can't imagine how disturbing that is for me. I got sent this picture, right? And it's from a school basement. They said they found a creepy room. I'm not gonna say the school. I'm not gonna say who sent it. Pretty benign, like the message, like they were like, look at this creepy room that I found. Nobody knows this is in the basement of my school. But I looked a bit closer and I found something that I think is wrong with this picture. Of course, before we get into it, if you're loving Creep Time, go click the link in my bio so you can listen to Creep Time, the podcast. So this photo, if you look right above where my head is, right at the wall, that is a foot. Like, that's a toe. I tried to zoom in like as much as I could, and I know it's very grainy, but you can't convince me that that is not a toe. And if that's a toe, that it means someone is in this room. Someone is standing behind that wall. If I increase the contrast, if you can see it any better, to think somebody was just hiding in this room.
So Annabelle is actually based on a true story.
Isn't it that Raggedy Ann looking one? I feel like I've seen pictures of like a side-by-side with the two dolls.
So Donna and Angie are mother and daughter. Donna got her daughter Angie a doll. Shortly after like she got her the doll, they started noticing like really weird stuff with the doll, right? So the doll would like move a little bit. Not like as they're looking at it, oh, the leg is in a new position or the arm is in a new position, and they were always just like, oh, that's just gravity. Then the doll started like moving locations throughout the house. Right? And then they started finding like handwritten notes on this really old like parchment paper that nobody in the house had. It's from like forever ago. One night the doll is found with blood pouring out of her hand. Look, this is crazy. You can't make this up. Pouring out of her hands and chest, right? Something's not adding up. So they did the first thing they thought to do was we're gonna call a medium. So when the medium came, it was like what she told them like terrified them, and it's honestly sending chills like down my spine as I'm about to tell you it. The median said,
so I have an incubus story time that I want to share. This is actually the one that I originally shared about a year ago, but TikTok took it down because the comments were so wild. This time around, I'm going to keep the story very brief and not give so much detail. So story time. A friend of mine invited me over to her house for dinner. It was me, my fiance, her, and her husband. Now, I'm very sensitive, so normally when I walk into a person's home, I check around to see if I feel anything. When I walked into her home felt perfectly fine. The night went like you would expect. Right before we were getting ready to leave, she kept insisting for me to go into her bedroom. She said that her husband had bought her a picture that she really wanted me to see. For whatever reason, I didn't want to go into her room, but she was so insistent that I agreed. The minute I walked into her room, I felt it. It was almost like the air shifted, like the whole atmosphere changed. Like I was like almost struggling to breathe, and I knew there was something extremely dark in her room. I tried to like play it off and kind of make an excuse as to how I needed to leave the room right away. Soon after that, we left. I kept going back and forth on if I wanted to bring it to her attention, but a lot of times you don't know how a person's going to react, and they may think that like I'm like crazy. Finally, I decided to just give her a call. After I explained to her what I felt, the first words out of her mouth were, "So you mean he's still here?" And I'm like, who's still here? She then begins to tell me the story. She told me that months ago, one night she was laying in bed sleeping when about 3 a.m. she heard her husband coming into the bedroom. Now mind you, her husband works night shift, so she was a bit surprised that he was home so early. Her husband then proceeded to go underneath the blankets, and you can imagine. When she went to remove the blankets off of her, there was no one there. This went on for some time. For whatever reason, she started to get really attached to this thing. She would dream about him, and she started to like fall for him. Wow, this thing was literally sucking her energy off of her. She started to walk around looking like she was anemic. She had bags under her eyes. She then was always like covered in bruises that she couldn't explain. It got so bad that her husband had to like bring it to her attention and be like, there's something wrong with your health. Like, we need to get you checked out. She finally decided to come clean, and he went and took her to church. The minute she went to church with this, they prayed over her, they went to her house, they blessed her home. And she says from that time forward that it hasn't happened since. Which I then explained to her that all that did was cause him to become dormant, but that he was still there. Like, he's still there, he's just waiting for the opportunity to kind of swoop back in. I urged her to get help, and she never did. Last time we spoke, she had completely like just lost it, and I decided that for my family's safety, I needed to just completely cut her off.
Her killer was the absolute last person you would ever expect. When Sherry Rasmussen, a young, newly married woman, was found murdered in her home in 1986 in Los Angeles, police judged the crime scene and chalked it up to be a robbery gone wrong. They began their investigation as usual and found that although it appeared to be a burglary, nothing was stolen from inside the home except Sherry's BMW and her marriage certificate. And strangely, on Sherry's arm, there was an apparent bite mark left from her killer. Odd for a supposed break-in. Police look into Sherry's husband, John Rutten, but he had a rock-solid alibi. He was at work at the time of the murder, and there was no indication he would ever want to hurt his wife. Police attempted to follow up with the robbery theory, looking into similar cases in the area, but authorities weren't able to ID Sherry's killer. And the case went cold for over 20 years. But Sherry Rasmussen's family knew who the killer was from day one. They knew this was not a burglary, but rather it was only staged to appear as a robbery to throw off police. The killer was someone Sherry knew and feared. The murderer had been stalking Sherry in the months leading up to her death, and this person was a prominent, trusted, and powerful figure in the community, an individual that took an oath to protect. Sherry's murderer was the absolute last person that many suspected. And when this individual was later identified decades later, it shocked everyone. This is Avery After Dark, and I'm your host, Avery Ross.
Was Benjamin Franklin a serial killer? And before you say no, of course not, that's crazy, why were 15 bodies pulled from his basement? And before we dive in, if you're darkly curious, you'll love the podcast. So 200 years after Benjamin Franklin lived in this home, renovations were happening to turn it into a museum. Except when they were doing renovations, they found this small windowless room underneath his garden. And in it contained 1,200 bones from 15 different people. And dating the bones showed that they were from the time that Benjamin Franklin was in the house. So evidence doesn't really point to Benjamin Franklin being a serial killer, but the reason that they're there is still really dark. It's believed that the bodies were robbed from local graves for medical students to practice on. The practice was illegal, but no bodies were being donated to science at the time. Benjamin Franklin most likely knew this was happening. I mean, he was letting them use his home for it, but he probably turned a blind eye to it because he knew he would get in trouble if he was allowing this to happen.
Ghosts are real, and my followers have stories to prove it. This story is definitely going to keep you up tonight. I stopped to feed a friend's kitten while she was in the hospital once a long time ago. The babies were cute and playful, but refused to come to the bedroom. I got an overwhelming feeling that I needed to run. My entire body had waves of goosebumps and it was hard to breathe. I hurriedly gathered my things, and as I was half running out the door, my right shoulder was pulled and the door slammed shut. I dropped everything and left without locking the door. I couldn't sleep for about 3 days because every time I'd shut my eyes, I'd see horrible faces. When I would drift off from exhaustion, I had nightmares of various family members dying horrifically.
This is the most disturbing and heartbreaking video you will ever watch. Okay, so what I'm about to show you is the 911 call made by a 5-year-old girl after she found both of her parents dead. This is just completely heartbreaking, and here's the video.
Hello. Hello. Is everything okay? Hi, Mommy and Daddy. I think there's a bullet on the floor. Where's Mommy at? I don't know. I think they're dead. What do you mean, sweetheart? I don't know. Okay, your daddy's on the floor. How old are you? I'm 5 years old and I have a dog in the house. Okay, baby, okay. Let me get somebody right over to you. Did you go in your mommy and daddy's room? And there's blood. All over the place? Not all over. There's blood on the plant and blood on the floor. Oh my goodness. You have your little doggie with you? And 3 cats. And you got some cats too? 3 cats and 1 dog. Okay. Are you the only one there besides Mommy and Daddy? I said Mommy and Daddy and they didn't even answer. Okay. What made you wake up tonight? I think I heard a gunshot. You heard a gun? Yes, and I see a bullet laying on the floor. I think it's a bullet. Really? Mm-hmm. Who has a gun in the house? I don't see Tom, but I'm scared. Oh, sweetheart, I will not let anything happen to you. Can you send the stuff that you got? I promise I will. And you're only 5 years old? Mm-hmm. You are so smart for 5 years old. Was there anybody else in the house besides you and Mommy and Daddy tonight? Like an uncle or anything? No, there's no robber in the house. Okay, well, I didn't think there'd be a robber, sweetheart. Did you have anybody staying over the night with you guys tonight? Mm-mm. Okay, so and the doors are all locked and everything like that. Where are you in the house? Well, I was in my room sleeping, so I heard a noise shot. Oh my goodness.